Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. Today, we have fantasy basketball player rankings with the fantasy season starting in a couple of weeks. We are going through our category league rankings. Last week, we did our points league. Check that video out. But today, we are hopping into category league rankings for fantasy basketball 2024 to 2025. Our first player is, no surprise, Victor Wembanyama. He blocks shots like Gobert. He rebounds like Giannis. He shoots like Embiid. Now, he doesn't assist like Jokic, but you kind of get the point. This guy is a freak of nature. My number one player in fantasy basketball category rankings. Honestly, in points leagues too, you might want to take him number one overall, but definitely in category leagues. Such an elite player. First time in a couple of seasons you haven't had Nikola Jokic at number one overall, but I think it's for good reason. Wembanyama is just that different. At number three, Luka Doncic is my guy. Now, the free throw percentage has held him back in prior seasons, but it looks like he's gotten up to a respectable number for us here, so I don't really have a problem with him at 3 overall. Taking into account that 2-game playoff schedule late in the fantasy season, I still think 3rd overall, you can't pass up on Luka Doncic. My next player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, do have him in my 2nd tier, but still a great fantasy player. Obviously, we know what he does offensively, but the steal numbers, the defensive numbers are what carries him in your category leagues. The 2 steals and 1 block per game numbers from that shooting guard position, just so elite. You have to be excited about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in your category leagues. Next 2 guys I want to talk about, I list them together in category and points leagues. I think they're so similar in what they do on the floor. Obviously, Davis, more defensively driven, Embiid more of an offensive scorer. As you can see in the points per game numbers, Embiid averages 34 last year. Anthony Davis in the mid-20s. But Davis, the defensive numbers, the blocks, obviously give you an edge there. Both shoot pretty well from the free throw line. People are concerned about the injuries with these 2 players. Anthony Davis, pretty healthy last year. Embiid, not so much. We've kind of seen a continuing trend of Embiid breaking down over the course of the season. I'm still drafting him very highly, but I will give the edge to Anthony Davis as he's been able to stay a little bit more healthy the past couple of seasons. My next player, Tyrese Haliburton, much better category league player. The assist, 12 assists to go along with 20 points, elite for Haliburton, giving you a little bit over a steal per game and still shooting 85% from the free throw line and just near 3 3-pointers made per game. Now, honestly, what's maybe most impressive, he's able to average 12 assists per game, but only 3 turnovers. That assist to turnover ratio is elite for Haliburton. I think in category leagues, you can be very excited about him. Next, I will have Giannis. Now, this might be a little high for Giannis in your roto leagues. I mean, let's face it, the free throws are going to kill you. The 3-pointers are definitely nothing to get excited about, just around half a 3 per game. But honestly, I have him at 8 here because you can create a build around Giannis by punting the free throw percentage. Now, in a vacuum, maybe you move him down the rankings, but if you just want to punt that free throw percentage, I think he's a great player. Obviously, the counting stats with the points, rebounds, and getting you good assist numbers as well to go along with a little over a block and a steal per game. You might expect a little bit more than 1 block per game from a guy as good defensively as Giannis is, but I still think if you're creating your build correctly around him and punting that free throw number, I think he's a good pick in your leagues. Tatum is my next player. He's a very versatile first-round pick. Gives you 26 points. He gives you 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal per game. The field goal number is pretty solid, just under 50%, to go along with a high free throw and over 3 threes per game. So you can really create your team any way you want with a first-round pick in Tatum. Now, my next 2 players, Trae Young and LaMelo Ball. I have these guys right next to each other. I want to talk about them at the same time because they're very similar players in the kind of build you're going for on your fantasy basketball rosters. Obviously, 2 guys that are great scorers. Trae Young, a little bit more elite in that category. They score the basketball and they make a ton of threes. Not only that, they are also assisting at an elite clip. Maybe what's more important with these 2 guys, if you're going to draft them this highly, you have to be punting your field goal percentage and your turnover category. These guys both near 4 turnovers a game, also shoot only around 43% from the field. So they are hurting you pretty significantly in those 2 categories. But I'm willing to take that if you pair them with the right team. You're attacking the points, you're attacking the assists. And also these guys are pretty quietly, pretty solid at stealing the basketball. Trae Young, 1.4 steals a game, and LaMelo a little bit higher than that. So with these guys, you're really attacking the points, assist, free throw percentage, 3-pointers made, and even that steal category. These 2 guys, known for their offense, still get it done by taking it away from the other team. So you really have to create your build in a particular way if you're going to go get these guys because they are going to kill you when it comes to your turnovers and your field goal percentage. Donovan Mitchell is next for me. If you're going to tell me that Mitchell is going to hold this 1.8 steals per game number as he had last year, I think you could make an argument to move him even higher in this list. I think a lot of his production came from elevated minutes with Darius Garland dealing with a multitude of injuries last year. I think if you could see some of that usage rate come down for Donovan Mitchell, you're going to see a drop in his production. Very minimal, in my opinion. I mean, he's not going to fall off a cliff. He's still Donovan Mitchell. Like, he's a great player. But I don't know if he's going to reach just under 2 steals a game, which is what he was at last year, which made him so dynamic in your leagues. So with that concern, I do have him a little bit lower than maybe some other people. But still, I think he's a good, well-rounded player in fantasy. Speaking of well-rounded players, Scottie Barnes next for me. This guy really does it in every category you could ever want. I mean, 20 points a game. You expect that number to grow up for a player entering the prime of his career. 8 rebounds, 6 assists, over a steal per game, over a block per game, right at 48% from the field, 80% from the free throw line, just under 2 threes per game, and under 3 turnovers per game. So he's not going to blow you away in any particular category, but he is just very consistent across the board. That's why I have him ranked so highly. Now, if you want to shoot for the upside in these picks, maybe move him down your list, but he's just so consistent for a Toronto Raptors team that we could see him take a huge leap forward yet again. I think he's just very safe to draft. A guy a lot of people are excited to draft this year, James Harden. Honestly, looking at this, I might have him a little bit too high if I had to redo it. But James Harden, I mean, who else is left in Los Angeles? Kawhi Leonard's dealing with a knee injury. I mean, that's going to happen every single year. Kawhi Leonard, knee injuries, they just go together. Paul George no longer there. Russell Westbrook no longer there. It's James Harden. He's going to control this offense and this team on most nights. In games without Paul George, we saw his numbers creep up to 20-plus points and getting near double-digit assist numbers. So if you could see those numbers elevate to go along with some decent defensive numbers, a steal per game, we know he can shoot the long ball and he hits his free throws. Another guy like Trae Young and LaMelo Ball, who you are punting your field goal percentage at 42% from the floor. And I think James Harden, much later in his career, as opposed to some of those ascending guys like the Trae Young and LaMelo Ball. That's why I have them higher than James Harden here. Next, I have Anthony Edwards. Last year, he was giving you 26, 5, and 5 to go along with nearly a steal and a half per game. His field goal percentage wasn't too terrible. He's at 46%, so he's not tanking you there. You'd like him to get a little bit more threes, 2.5 threes per game, still a good number. And then that free throw percentage, I think you're going to see that climb as these players get a little bit older and more developed. An 84% free throw percentage last year. If you can get that up to 87 to 90%, he could be able to pay some serious value in your drafts. Next, I will have the chef, Steph Curry. You're drafting Steph Curry in the first 2 rounds. You're doing it for his 3-pointers made. Nobody's doing it better than Steph Curry. Just under 5 triples made per game. Now, the defensive numbers, not very good. Under a steal, under a block per game. Obviously, for Steph Curry, you don't expect that from him. You're paying for these points and these 3-pointers made to go along with a very high free throw percentage. Obviously, Steph Curry makes free throws with his eyes closed. And, of course, his mouthpiece hanging out of his mouth. But it is a 36-year-old player, so we do expect some natural regression. Then again, you look at LeBron James, who we'll talk about very shortly, and you never know. The near 40-year-old LeBron James still doing it at an elite level. Maybe we see a step back as he starts maybe coaching his son on floor this year with Bronny James. The defensive numbers have kind of dipped drastically for James, only getting you half a block per game to go along with bad free throws. Now, he is solid across the board. Other than those categories, the turnovers have also been up for James. But at age 40 this year, I mean, at some point it's going to fall off a cliff. I don't expect it to happen this year. I think he's still going to be a reliable option, but it is going to be a slow regression for LeBron James as he ends his career. Next, I have Chet Holmgren. Maybe a little low for Chet Holmgren, but they do bring in Hartenstein from New York to play center for this Thunder team. It concerns me a little bit for those defensive numbers, as Hartenstein profiles to be a very good defensive center. Chet Holmgren, he kind of makes his money off his blocks. He's over 2 blocks per game. Nowhere near what Wembanyama is, but I project him to be around 18 to 19 points, getting 9 rebounds. He's going to need those blocks to stay relevant in fantasy. I think he's going to get them. I just don't see a massive jump with Hartenstein clogging that lane, also being a rim protector alongside him. Next, this is going to end the slide for Domantas Sabonis. In our points league rankings, we had him in the top 12, have him much lower than that here. With DeMar DeRozan in town, I think the numbers do decline slightly. Keeping that in mind, the free throw percentage at 70%, the threes basically a non-factor there, and the defensive numbers very poor for a big man like Sabonis. So you do have to not get as excited in category leagues as your points league for Sabonis, even though the numbers 19 and 13 last year from points and rebounds, very impressive. But yeah, we would favor him in their points league. On the exact opposite spectrum, Karl Anthony Towns, maybe more impressive in category leagues. Obviously, maybe the best shooting center in the league. Just over 2 threes a game to go along with near 90% from the free throw line for a 7-footer. Now, Towns, I am a little skeptical. I don't have him as high as some other people. The assist numbers concern me. Only 3 assists. Now, you're not drafting him for his assists, but the Knicks do project to have Jalen Brunson be a better facilitator than Anthony Edwards was for the Timberwolves. Not only that, he's under a steal and under a block per game. You'd expect a big center like Towns to be able to block more shots. They did have him playing more on the perimeter with Gobert playing at the rim, so maybe he does see a bump in the block numbers. But in your category leagues, you're drafting him for that 50% field goal mark. You're drafting him for that 90% free throw percentage and those 3-pointers made that he gives you from the center position. Someone you can definitely target if you're attacking the threes, the field goal, the free throw percentage as well. Next, I have a pair of Phoenix Suns teammates, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, back-to-back in my rankings. We saw Booker's assist numbers pretty impressive last year, over 6 assists a game, actually just under 7 assists. Able to get 50% from the floor, 88% from the free throw line, and we know he's a good shooter from beyond the arc. I think he's a good player in fantasy. Kevin Durant, we did see the numbers decline a bit at the end of the year, which causes some concern, but he's still Kevin Durant. We know he's going to score a lot of points at a very respectable field goal percentage, over 50%, and he still gets you 2 steals and blocks combined. So I think Kevin Durant's still a fair option, even though we did see a dip in some production at the end of the year. Jalen Brunson is next. I am a little bit concerned of the usage for Brunson. Last year, he was the guy with Julius Randle out. Now they bring in Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns. While he still is going to be the leader of this offense, I don't know if they're going to be so reliant on him. So Brunson, I do expect that usage to drop a little bit with these other big names in New York. And last, to round out my top 24, Alperen Sengun. Not really a category league player. Better in your points leagues. But if I'm going to call him a mini Jokic, I got to get him in my top 24. He does kill you at the free throw line and those 3-pointers. 70% from the free throw line, under half a 3 per game. But if you can build around him, I mean, he's going to give you 22 points, around 10 rebounds, over 5 assists, over a steal per game. We do have to get the block numbers up. He is under a block per game. Not really known for that defense, but if he can get these numbers up, these offensive numbers, maybe that carries him to being a top 24 player. I just think he's a ascending player in Houston, and I had to sneak him in my top 24, but I could see reasons why you would be a little hesitant on him since he is tanking you when it comes to their free throws and threes. That's going to wrap up my top 24 player rankings for category leagues. Obviously, no one is going to agree with this. Let me know in the comment section who I left off, who I have too high, and who I have way too low. Who are you drafting in your top 24 that I did not put on this list? Let me know in the comment section. Check out our points league rankings we posted last week. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more fantasy basketball content. We're going to keep coming until the start of the regular season. Get you ready for your fantasy basketball drafts. That's going to do it here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week with another episode of The Fantasy Birds.